Hello. Hello, everybody, on this Monday afternoon, and welcome to our Crocheting in the Round class. My name's Claire. I'll be hanging out in the chat with you. Darren is our teacher there on screen, showing the pattern that we're going to be using to demonstrate these crocheting in the round techniques. If you have any questions on what Darren is covering over the course of the class, go ahead and type them in the chat box, and I can either answer them directly or I'll pass them on to Darren so he can demonstrate for us on screen. And I'll also pop the handout in there a few times in case you need that as well. And now that all of that is out of the way, we'll let Darren take over.
All right, welcome to class. Today we are going to learn how to crochet in the round. We're going to learn how all the skills that you need to make this jellyfish. But after you've had a chance to practice and you've made the jellyfish, you can take these skills and apply them to many other projects, and you'll really be able to learn how to crochet a lot of new things, a lot of interesting things. Crocheting in the round is really fun. I really like it a lot. I'm going to be using, in class today, I'm using this yarn to demonstrate. This is called Hometown Bonus Bundle. And I like to demonstrate with this yarn because it's nice. It's a nice big yarn. It's easy for the students to see what I'm doing. It shows up a little better on camera. If you like it, it comes in a wide variety of colors, and you can get this at michaels.com or lionbrand.com, or you can go into the store and look at it and see all the colors in person. It's really good. You don't have to use the yarn that the pattern's calling for. Some other yarns that would be good. Wool Ease is always a good choice, and it also comes in a very large amount of colors. Wool Ease Thick and Quick is a classic. Again, great color choices. Heartland is a fun one, and you can pretty much pick any color you like and it will be available. So, feel free to experiment with different yarns and decide which one, maybe you have a favorite yarn that you want to use. The most important thing when you're doing amigurumis and when you're crocheting really with anything, you want to make sure you have the right size hook. So you can follow this pattern with super bulky yarn, but you're going to want to make sure you change the hook. And usually when we're doing amigurumis, we want to use a hook that's one or two sizes smaller so that the fabric is very tight and dense. And that way the holes don't show as much and you don't see the stuffing through it. So if you want to go down 1 or 2 or 3 hook sizes, see what the fabric looks like and decide what's right for you. And then you can, progress, at your own pace from there. So that's just a little bit about the yarn and the hooks that I'm going to be using today. So if we want to change the view to the view of my hands, we'll go ahead and get started. Get these out of the way. So this is, I don't know if you could really see what we're making. This jellyfish, we start off making the body. We have to make the underside and then the tentacles, which are really cute. So this is what we're making today. We're learning how to make it today. And then after we learn how and you practice, then you'll be able to make one. So, all righty. Any questions before we get started at all? Any questions?
I think we're all good.
Okay. I'm using a 10mm hook. I like to teach with this hook. I like it makes the stitches very large, but if I was doing an amigurumi, I would use a smaller hook to close up those stitches. So, all right, just a quick review on crochet, what we're doing for crochet. With crochet, we want to start with a slip knot. So, and the slip knot in crochet, we want to do it a certain way, and I call this way short over long. So you take your ball of yarn, and this is the long piece because it's your working yarn connected to the ball of yarn. And then this is going to be your tail, so that's the short piece. So you lay it out in a circle like this with the short piece over the long piece. You put your hand in the center, you sneak under, you grab onto your tail, hold the tail and the working yarn together, and then just pull it back through. And that's how I like to tie a slip knot for crochet. If you don't tie your slip knot like that, it's fine. There's many ways of doing it. But in crochet, especially if we're doing it in the round, it's nice sometimes if the tail is what controls the size of the loop. So that's just one way of doing it. So, and then you pop your crochet hook right on there. And I'm just going to review chaining really quick just to make sure everybody has a good concept of the basics. So for chaining, you grab the yarn, turn your hook down, and pull it through. So grab your yarn, turn the hook down, pull it through. And that's, let me put my glasses on. And that is how we chain. So any questions about chaining or doing the slip knot?
What size hook are you using there again, Darren?
This is a size 10 millimeter, but it's just for practice. If I were making a real amigurumi out of this yarn, I would probably use an 8 millimeter. I would go down a size, maybe a 7. But just for practice, this makes nice big stitches. I think they show up a little better on camera. Okay, so that's chaining. I want to show you how to do the single crochet. So for single crochet, you enter your stitch, bring up a loop, yarn over, and pull through both. Okay, so you just enter the chain, yarn over, bring up a loop, yarn over, and pull it through both. Enter the chain, bring up a loop. You have 2 loops on your hook, yarn over, bring it through both. Okay. Now half double starts with a yarn over, and it's pretty similar. You enter the stitch, yarn over, bring up a loop, yarn over. Now I have 3 loops on my hook, so I'm going to pull it through all 3, and that's a half double. Yarn over, enter the hook, bring up a loop, and there are 3 loops on my hook, yarn over, pull it through all 3. Sometimes you kind of have to tease it through. Now for a double crochet, it starts with a yarn over, same as half double, enter the stitch, bring up a loop. So it's pretty much the same as a half double to this point. And then you yarn over, bring it through 2, yarn over, bring it through 2. And that's why it's a double, because you bring it through 2 twice. So yarn over, enter the stitch, bring up a loop. I have 3 loops on my hook, yarn over, bring it through 2, yarn over, bring it through 2. Okay. Any questions about these basics? How do we feel about doing some of the basics?
I think we feel pretty good about most of that.
All right. Everyone should have a good start then. All right, so I'm going to rip this out. So crocheting in the round is a little bit different than crocheting flat. The stitches are all the same, so that's the good news. You don't have a lot to learn. You just have to think about things a little different. So I'm going to start with a slip knot. And there are 2 ways. I'm going to show you 2 different ways of starting crocheting in the round. And then you can pick whichever way is right for you. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to chain 4. If you can't see, let me know. Sometimes it's hard for me to get the right angle so that the camera is showing right. So chain 4, and then I'm going to go back in my first stitch and join it with a slip stitch. Bring it through. I'm joining it with a slip stitch. And sometimes I put my finger right in there to make sure I know where that center is. So you want to open up that center and make sure you know where it is. And I'm going to do single crochet. So I did a chain 1. Let's do half double. So I'm going to do a chain 2. If you were going to do a double, you would do a chain 3, whatever stitch you're doing. So yarn over, enter the stitch, yarn over. I'm sorry, not enter the stitch. So yarn over, and I'm going to go in the center. So I'm not entering a stitch. I misspoke. So I'm going to go right through the center of that circle, yarn over and bring it through all two, or all three. Yarn over. So there's my center. So for half double, yarn over, go through the center, bring up a loop, yarn over, and bring it through all three. And you would continue doing this until you get all the way around. Okay, are you able to see what I'm doing? Are there any questions of how I got here? Just gonna finish this round. That's another thing, when you're crocheting or knitting in the round, instead of rows, you'll hear the pattern will refer to it as rounds. So you want to make sure you're either doing rows or rounds. So I'm doing a round. I finished my round. And then I'm going to join. So I'm going in the first stitch and I'm joining that with a slip stitch. And then to do the second round, if I'm going to continue half double, I would chain two to bring up the height and then yarn over and then just continue on the next stitch, however your pattern is telling you. Okay. Now, usually on the second round, if we're making something that's flat, we want to increase. So, and again, the pattern will tell you how many to increase and when to do it. So here's my first stitch, yarn over. I'm going to enter the same stitch. That's the same stitch I just did. Bring up a loop, yarn over, bring it through two. Or, I'm sorry, bring it through all three. So yarn over, enter the next stitch, bring up a loop, 3 loops on my hook, yarn over, bring it through all three. I'm going to do another increase. I'm going to go in that same place where that stitch is and yarn over, bring up a loop, 3 loops on my hook, yarn over and bring it through all three. So that is starting in the center with chain 4 and joining them and then working into the center. But you can see it leaves a big hole. And you can do it a little bit tighter and close up that hole, but that's always the problem with this method, is that sometimes you end up with a hole that's bigger than what you wanted. If you're making a hat, you could put a pom-pom on there and it covers it, but sometimes that is a problem. So I'm going to show you another way of starting. So we're going to start again with a slip knot. Do my slip knot. And this is the situation where it's most important that the tail controls the size of the loop. So that's going to help us avoid this big hole. So the tail is controlling how big the loop is. So you're going to pop your hook right on there. And I'm going to chain 2 because I'm going to do half double again. I'm going to put my finger there so I can see where I'm working, but I'm not working. I'm working in the center of that slip knot. So I didn't, create any stitches. I'm going to work right in the center of that slip knot. So I chained 2 because I'm making half doubles, yarn over, enter the stitch, and bring through all 3. So these are just half doubles. I'm going to quickly try to get around so I can show you how this works. While I'm doing this, are there any questions? I want to make sure you guys are able to see what I'm doing, or if you need me to explain something more clearly, I'm always happy to do it. So just doing half doubles to complete this, and your pattern will tell you how many you need to do, but I'm just practicing, so I'm just going to do enough to get me around.
Jessica wants to know if this is the same as the magic circle or the magic ring technique.
I think so. I always call it the magic ring, but I think it could be the magic circle. Magic loop is something different. That's a knitting, but I think there are different things you can call it. So that's my first stitch right there. So I'm going to just join that with a slip stitch. Okay, and then now I've got that hole. If I did everything right, when I pull this tail, that hole will cinch shut. Okay, so now you can see the difference. This has a large hole, and this one, because of the way we did it, and you pull that tail and it's closed up very tight. So again, with this one, I could have made that better, but I wasn't trying to knit or trying to crochet really tight. But if you're really careful, you can make it smaller, but there's still always going to be a little bit of a hole when you start with the chain 4 and join it. You're going to end up with a little hole at least. And then if you do the magic circle or magic ring, then you end up, you can pull that tight and cinch it up very tight. Okay, any questions? There might be questions now about the magic ring or starting it this way with chain 4.
I think if you can go back and show the chain 4 technique again, now that we
Okay.
know a little bit more the difference between them.
So chain 4, so start with your slip knot. This one, it doesn't really matter if the tail controls the size of the loop or not, but I always encourage people to do it that way so you get in the habit of doing it that way, and you always know the way to do it if you want to do magic ring. So I'm just going to chain 4. So 1, oops, keep your hook on there. 2, 3, 4. Usually it's chain 4. I guess you could do a chain 3, but you just need to make sure you can, make a little circle. And then I'm going to go back in my first stitch. So just right through that first stitch. And I'm going to join it. This is called joining it with a slip stitch. I'm going to bring it through my first stitch and then bring it through my last chain that I did. And now I'm going to chain 2 for half doubles. And whenever I join it, I always put my finger in it, or maybe hold my finger and my thumb. You'd be surprised. Sometimes it's hard. You might end up thinking that was the center or something. So just keep the center handy for you. So yarn over, and I'm going to go through the center. And the other time we just went through the slip knot, but this time we created a little ring. Does that make sense? Were you guys able to see what happened? You want me to do it again? How do we feel about it, Claire?
Laura had a good question that made me want to clarify this method of working in the round, because she wanted to know you can start with any number of chains, right? Not just 3. And so I thought we should clarify that this is for items that are going to be solid, like your amigurumi, like if you're making a sphere or starting a hat from the top down or something, or if you're working like a granny square, this is how you start in the center.
Yeah.
But you could also, like, say, if you were making a cowl or an infinity scarf, that is when you would chain, 100, 200, however, and then you could just join that very long chain in the round to make a big loop.
Yeah, and then that'll be the same. That's easy to start. You just start with a chain. Again, how many, like you said, 200 or 50 or whatever the pattern wants. You join just like I did here with 4, you join with a slip stitch, and then you just start crocheting into that chain however the pattern instructs you. You could do singles, doubles, triples, half doubles, anything. You just work right into that chain like normal. So, but then that way you're going to have a big opening, like big enough to put your head through. So, but this is for when we're creating an opening that needs to be smaller. So you can see how this is the top of the octopus or the jellyfish, and this could be a little beret or a little hat for a child. And so you just want that to be pulled closed. So that's what the magic ring is basically for this situation. or like a granny square, like Claire said, but that might be for another day to talk about. So here's the octopus or the jellyfish, and you can see at the top, there's not really a hole there because I was able to pull that closed tight. Any other questions? It's a good question. Yeah, sometimes, I think I know how everything's going to work out. And so sometimes I forget to explain things. And so if you guys have questions, make sure you ask, because sometimes it's easy for a teacher to skip over something that seems obvious to me, but because you're learning, it's not really obvious at all.
And then I missed the very beginning part of your second demonstration, but an eagle-eyed class member caught that wasn't exactly the magic ring or the magic circle technique. I think it's a little bit different, where you sort of loop the yarn around your hand and work right into that circle without having to make a slip knot at first.
Okay, well, there's different ways of doing everything. That's one thing I love about crochet, and that way might be better. And we can try that way, or you can do it this way. But I think the end result's pretty much the same. But that's the one thing I love about knitting and crochet. You can learn. There's always more than one way to do stuff. So there's always something new to learn too. All right, anything else?
I think we're all set to continue.
Okay, so I showed you two different ways of starting. We started with the magic ring, or maybe it's imposter magic ring, maybe it's not. And we started with the chain 4, which leaves the big hole, and this closes it up. Now, once we've reached the end of our circle and we're ready to join, there are two different ways of doing this. There are two different techniques. One way you can work in a spiral, and the other way you work it's called joined rounds. So if I'm going to work in a spiral, then all I do is I just continue. So I'm doing half doubles and say my pattern, whatever it said, I finished whatever I'm supposed to do, yarn over. Here's my first stitch. Make sure you find it right here. And so all I'm going to do is just go back into my first stitch and then just keep going. And I'm going to do some increases here because it's the second round and I want the circle to get bigger. So you do have to do some increases. So did you see how I joined it there? You probably think there's some special technique or something, but it's really, there's nothing. All you do is you just keep going. So you want to see that again?
Yeah, let's back up and see that again.
Yeah. So you just keep going all the way around. One thing I do encourage my students to do, so when you make your first stitch, it's a nice idea to put a stitch marker. So I forgot to show you that, but it's nice to have a stitch marker so that you can see exactly where you're supposed to go. But I just put it there. And now I'm going to finish my round. I have how many ever I'm doing. I'm following the pattern very closely. And then, so now I'm going to join, I'm going to join this, but I'm going to work in a spiral. So there's my first stitch, yarn over for my half double, and then you just enter that stitch. So there's really nothing special happening. And then you finish your half double. And again, I'm going to do an increase because we're doing the second round and we want it to get bigger. And then you just keep going, doing whatever the pattern instructs you to do, whatever you're making, whatever pattern you're following. Does that make sense? Any questions? It's really simple. So it might, if you think it looks too easy, you probably got it. But there is one drawback to this method, and I want to show you when I get all the way around. So I'm doing an increase in each stitch. Frequently, that's what they'll have you do on the first round, is do an increase on each stitch, and that usually helps to keep it flat. So that's, you might see that a lot in these kind of patterns. And when you're working in a spiral, it is very important to have a stitch marker because sometimes it's hard to tell where you're starting and stopping. So I'm coming back around. I'm not doing anything. I'm just working into each stitch as I come to them. Super easy. One thing that happens though, just say I finished that off. If that were finished off, you do get this right here, this little step. It's not a smooth circle. So what happens is it's like a snail shell. Your spiral like a snail shell, and then this is kind of where the snail would come out. So you're going to end up with this little step, or this, it's called a step or like a little jog. And one thing you can do to kind of step down from that. So I was working in half double. So this is if you're finishing. This is for the last, the last 3 stitches. So do a half double, and then I'm going to do a single, and then I'm going to do a slip stitch. And that helps you to kind of step down from that, and then you don't end up with a big step. And then when you weave in your ends, you can kind of pull that down and make it into a nice smooth circle. Okay. When you're doing a color change though, if I were doing stripes, sometimes you end up with a jog there when you're doing stripes. So you need to be careful about that, decide what you want to do. I don't mind it. Some people really mind it. It just depends on how you live your life. So any questions on that one? And I'm going to show you the second way to do it. So that's working in a spiral.
And then real quick, at the end, once you worked into the mark stitch, you would just make sure to move that marker up, right?
Yeah, as you're doing it, you can move the marker up, or instead of moving it up, if you have a bunch of them, you can always add a new marker, and then that will tell you how many rounds you've done. You can count the stitch markers, which rounds, how many rounds you've done. Sometimes in crochet, it can be hard to count, so it's nice to have like a crutch or something helping you. But yeah, you can. I usually just move it up each time, or you can, add more to keep track of your round. Now, another way, and then you can decide which way is best for you, or the pattern might tell you. This is called working in joined rounds. Put a stitch marker here. So I've got a stitch marker on my first stitch. I'm working half doubles, until I finish my circle. Okay, that's my first stitch. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to join it with a slip stitch. So I'm going to go into my first stitch, and I'm not going to do a half double. I'm just doing a slip stitch. And you can see that makes it much smoother. But now I'm going to decide what stitch am I going to do for the next row. So let's just do half double, continue with half double. So I'm going to chain 2 for my half double. And then I'm going to do a half double in my first stitch. I'm going to do 2 of them again, because I'm increasing the first round. And then I'll take my stitch marker out. And I'm going to put it at the top of my chain 2. Let me get around here as fast as I can, and I'll show you how that affects the next, how we do that again. Just trying to quickly get over there as fast as I can. See, with this one, I'm not increasing as much, and you can see it's starting to be shaped more like a bowl or a hat. So if you keep increasing at the right rate, then your item will be flat. But if you don't do increases, then it will start to curve up like a bowl or a hat. Or if you do too many increases, it'll start to be like a ruffle. Okay, so now I'm finishing my round. Do my last stitch. Okay, all done. And so here's the first, there's my chain 2. So I'm going to go, sometimes you have to take your stitch marker out to get in there. So I'm going to go into the chain 2. Don't work with your tail. Oh no, it's not my tail. I just ran out of yarn. So you're going to join that with a slip stitch to bring it through and join it with a slip stitch. And then if you're going to do half double again, you would chain 2 and continue on with a half double. So that is working in joined rounds. And this one is working in a spiral. So there are 2 different ways of crocheting in the round. Usually the pattern will tell you which way it wants you to do it. This way is very simple because you just go round and round and round. You do end up with this little jog, but that's easy to overcome. This one, it gives you a very smooth, nice circle. If you're doing stripes, this one gives you a nice clean stripe because you would cut your yarn and then add your new color, so you get a good clean stripe. This one with working in joined rounds, you do end up with a little seam that goes up the side of the back of your project, but that's not a big deal either. So they both have good reasons and bad reasons, so you can decide which one you like. Any questions about them, how they're different, how to do them, how do we feel about it?
A couple questions on the joined round method. I think this may be a question of it varies. When you're doing your beginning chain to get the height for the stitch, does that count as an actual stitch?
See, that's a controversial question. You never know until you read the pattern. The pattern will tell you chain 2 or chain 3, whatever, chain 1, whatever you're doing, counts as a stitch, or it might read chain 2 does not count as a stitch. So it's up to the designer and it's up to the person writing the pattern how they want that to be. And if you're designing your own project, you can try it and see which way works out best for that project. So it could be either way. So that's why it's kind of confusing. Isn't it, Claire? Do you have anything to say about that?
I was just going to say this is an answer of it depends on the pattern.
Yep. There's, we always want a good, clean, clear answer, but sometimes there just isn't one. I'm going to join it. Slip stitch and then, okay. Any other questions? How do we feel about it? It's really easy. Once you get it in your hand and you start doing it, you'll be able to see the differences pretty quick. And it's pretty easy after you've had a chance to practice a little.
Oh, I was going to say, well, you've still got your swatches there. Maybe you can hold them up to the camera so we can see the difference. When you're working in the spiral method, that means that the same side of the fabric is always facing you. So it's all going to look the same. Versus in the turned and joined, you get sort of like a quote unquote, one right side, one wrong side row. So that mimics the look of something that's worked flat.
Well, now that you've said that, there's another way to do it. Add some more yarn. So you can join. So I'm going to join it. And I'm just going to add some more yarn because I'm running out of my swatch yarn. And I'm going to chain 2. You can either turn and go back, or sometimes you can continue on the same direction. So you can continue on the same direction, kind of like you do in the spiral method. Or it might tell you to turn and you'll be going back the other direction. And in that case, you will get a little different texture because you're working on the front and then on the back. So, but the pattern will tell you what you should do. It'll say chain 2 and turn or something like that. Isn't that what it usually says, Claire? It'll tell you to chain and then turn.
Oh, right.
Yeah. So there's so many ways of doing everything. So, keep learning, keep practicing and learning. Any other questions?
I think we are ready to move on.
Okay. So we did increases. Let me show you, and then we'll review the pattern, how we do a decrease, because we're going to have to do decreases while we're making this. So all of these stitches, everything I'm showing you, you will need to make this, and you can choose which methods you like the best. So chain 2, yarn over. I'm going to do a couple half doubles, just normal ones, just to kind of get going. All right, now I'm going to show you how to do a decrease. So we did an increase where we did 2 stitches in 1 stitch, and that makes that adds a stitch. But if we want to make our project smaller, we have to do a decrease. So we have to take a stitch away. So for half double, you start with the yarn over, you enter the stitch, bring it up, yarn, oh, well, hold on. I have 3 loops on my hook. If I were going to finish this, I would yarn over and pull it through all 3, but I'm not going to finish it. So yarn over, enter the next stitch, bring up a loop, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, yarn over and pull through all 5. Sometimes you have to tease it through. So yarn over, enter the next stitch, bring up a loop, 3 loops on my hook, yarn over, enter the next stitch, bring up a loop, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So you do a decrease, and you can see that's really making this edge kind of stand up. So yarn over, enter the stitch, bring up a loop, yarn over, enter the stitch, bring up a loop, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, pull it through. Any questions? You can see when you do that, I don't know if it shows up, but it really brings this it makes a wall or like a side edge. And if we continued it, it would end up closing it up. Any questions?
Nope, I think we're good.
All right. Just to make things a little more confusing, sometimes if you want it, this is supposed to be invisible, but it's less visible. When you're doing the half double, instead of going through both loops, you can go through just the first loop. And that's supposed to make it less bulky and more invisible. 2, 3, 4, 5. I think I did it wrong. I was talking, I wasn't paying attention. So yarn over, enter the stitch, bring up a loop, yarn over, enter the next stitch, but I'm just going through the front loop and then bring it through all. And if you're working on a flat piece like a baby blanket or a scarf or something, you don't want to do that because it's going to add a little bar or a little edge on the other side. But if you're working in the round and it's not going to be seen, then it's an option you can decide. So any questions about that?
And just to clarify how that is abbreviated, that's the HDC2TOG or HDC2 together, right?
Yes, and we can look at that when we review the pattern, if it'll have the abbreviations in the pattern. Okay. Any questions about doing the decreases? All right, then. I think we're ready to start reviewing the pattern. So here's the pattern. It says it's an octopus, but clearly to me, it looks like a jellyfish. Claire, you really like sea life. Jellyfish or octopus?
I think this is definitely a jellyfish.
Jellyfish. I would say it has 8 tentacles, though. I don't think jellyfish, I think jellyfish have more than 8, but this is not, we're not working scientifically. We're just making fun things. So this pattern is a free pattern on lionbrand.com. You can always print another one. It's free. It's available for you. And so when we start looking at a pattern, the skill level is easy. The size is about 14 inches, but it doesn't make any difference at all because it's a toy. If it's a little bigger, a little smaller, it'll be fine. It gives the amount of yarn that you need. So you need one ball of, it's A Star is Born Nap Time is the original yarn this was written for. But again, like I said, you can make it out of any yarn that you have, and you should be fine. Just make sure you use the correct stitch. The correct hook. You need stitch markers and a large-eyed blunt needle for weaving in your ends. You're going to need some stuffing for filling it up later. Gauge does not matter for this pattern at all. Here is half double. I don't know if you can see that. Is it showing half double two together right there? Right there, right above my thumb. That's what it looks like. Half double crochet two together, and that's what we just did. Sometimes the pattern will give notes. The top, the base, and the tentacles are all worked separately. Sometimes everything is worked together and crocheted all together at the same time. The tentacles are tied to the base, and then the base is sewn and stuffed. The gauge is not, it doesn't make any difference. So, all right, let's look at this jellyfish. So here is the start of it. So the first thing you're going to make is you're going to make the top, and that's what it looks like when you're finished. Chain two, work half double crochet in the second chain from the hook. Oh, I didn't even show that method. I showed two methods and I forgot which one the pattern used. So that's pretty much the same as what we've been doing. It's a little different there. So let me show that real quick. I forgot about that. So there's always more ways to learn, and there's always more ways to do things. So chain two, and then work, what is it? Work 8 half doubles in the second chain from the hook. So when we're counting our chains, we don't count the one on the hook. So 1, 2, that's the second chain from the hook. And I'm just going to go right in that chain. So it's pretty much like what we've been doing, but it's just another way of doing it. So 8, so 1, and you just go in that first chain. And if you did the magic ring, or if you did chain 4, it's not going to make any difference. You can choose whichever one is best for you and live your best life. Okay. And again, I'm not being super careful, but if you crocheted really tight, and see, that's actually pulling it closed. That's almost like a magic ring. So lots of different ways of doing it. There's at least 3. I bet there's others. I bet there's more ways that I'm not even thinking of. Okay, so you work 8 half double crochet in the second chain from the hook. Do not join. Work in continuous rounds, which means a spiral. So at the end of this first one, you'll have 8 half double crochets. If you hate working in a spiral and you really wanted to work in joined rounds, maybe you want to do stripes and you want the stripes to line up nicer, you can do whichever one you want. It's not going to change the outcome. So it is telling you to place a marker in the last stitch to make sure you know the end of the round, and then move the marker up as each round is completed. So, all right. So round number 2, you're going to work 2 half doubles in each stitch. So you're doubling it. You'll have 16. In round 3, 2 single crochets. So now it's changed to single crochet. And sometimes it'll do that because it changes the texture or the pattern of it a little bit. So we're working 2 single crochets in the next stitch, single crochet in the next stitch, and repeat. So basically we're doing an increase every other stitch. So that's pretty basic. Can do that. Round 4, 2 single crochets in the next stitch, single crochet in the next 2 stitches, and then repeat. So, we're spreading out our increases, adding a stitch in between them for each round. And that way, if you do it that way and you do it correctly, your piece will lay nice and flat like that. If you don't do enough increases, then it'll start turning up like that. If you do too many, then it ends up kind of ruffled like that. So sometimes that happens, all right? Any questions about how we start at the top or about how to do the increases? Any questions at all? I'm not going to do the rest. This is the same thing. So I'm just going to skip that. If it's all right. Do we have any questions?
Nope. Let's go ahead and look at the rest of the pattern.
All right, so once you finish the first set of the instructions, you're just going to have a flat piece and it'll be this big. And then we have to figure out how are we going to close it up and make it smaller. So that is the next thing. We're going to, on round 16, you want to half double crochet 2 together, half double crochet in the next 7 stitches, and then repeat. And then you'll have 64. Half double crochet in each stitch around. So just doing half doubles, half double crochet 2 together, half double crochet in the next 6 stitches and repeat, 56. And then it says working in the back loops only, single crochet in each stitch around, and that is going to give you a little bit of an edge. So it's what gives you, and it gives you a little edge right here. And then at the end, we use that little edge and we put this ruffle on it. So it's going to give you a little edge right there. Okay. Working in, okay, so yeah, here, working in the unworked front loops of the previous round only, slip stitch in the first stitch, chain 3, skip the next 2 stitches, slip stitch in the next stitch. And so that's what this is right here. So you do a stitch right there, and then you do your chain 3, you skip your stitches, and then you continue on. Okay. Any questions about how to make the top?
That all seems pretty straightforward.
And it is, it's very straightforward. So if you think it sounds too easy, then you're probably right. It's probably pretty easy. Once you get it in your hand, though, you might run into some trouble. You might have to practice, so don't get discouraged, but it does take practice. And then for the bottom piece, you work it exactly the same as the top up through round 7, and then you end at round 7, you're going to join with a slip stitch. So you just continue on to round 7 and you'll end up with this little piece. Okay. So that's easy. And then the tentacles. You want to leave a very long beginning yarn tail, and that is going to be used to attach the tentacle to the bottom of it. And so this is what the tentacles look like. Leave very long tails. And we're just going to tie those right on. So you're going to chain 45. So that's easy. We know how to do that. Double crochet in the 4th chain from the hook. So you're going to skip 3. Double crochet, or I'm sorry, 2 double crochet in each stitch across. You'll end up with 90 double crochets. So you're doing 2 double crochets in every chain. So you're doubling the amount of stitches you're going to have. And because you're increasing so fast and so much, that's what causes it to ruffle like this and kind of turn into this twist. So, just do 2 in each stitch and, keep going. And then you want to make 8 of these. Any questions about how to make the tentacles?
That also sounds pretty easy.
Very easy. All right, and so to tie them on, decide the placement where you want them. I'm going to stick my hook right through the bottom piece. And I'm going to bring one of those strings through and then skip to the next stitch right next to it and bring the second long string through. And then you just want to tie this in a very secure knot. So I'm not going to do it because I want to be able to use this for my next class, but you just tie it in a very secure knot. You'd pull it very tight so it's not going to come undone. And then you'll just space them out however you want. I was going to say space them out evenly, but you can do whatever you want to do. And just make sure you're tying them all very secure because you don't want them to fall off. All right, any questions about how to attach the tentacles?
And you're doing this when the bottom piece is still separate, right?
I did it, yeah, you can do it either way. I think it's easier probably to do it when it's separate. I think when I did mine, I actually did it when I sewed it together and then did it. But yeah, I think it'll be easier if you do it before you sew it together. Well, how would you do it, Claire? Would you do it before or after you seam it?
Yeah, I would definitely do it while this is still a separate piece, because then it's a lot easier to tie the little tentacles on and get them all spaced out evenly.
Yeah, I think so. But you could do it either way. Depends on, how you want to do. So then you want to get some fiber fill, some fluff. There's one thing I like to let people know. So I made this one out of this yarn called Pound of Love, which is also available at michaels.com or lionbrand.com. This has so much yarn. So if you have a lot of yarn left over, you can actually stuff your amigurumi with the same yarn that you made it with. And then if you do that, you're not going to see anything through the holes. If you see anything through the holes, it'll be the same color. So that's an option. You don't have to do that, but you could do that. So if you look at this one, if it gets stretched, you can see the white the fluffy white in the middle. It doesn't look so bad on this, but if this were black or like navy blue, you could really see that white through it. So that might bother you, it might not bother you. So that's just something you can think about and decide what you want to do. So you want to, you don't stuff it first. So I didn't leave a long tail, but you want to leave a really long tail so that you can use the tail for seaming. That's what I should have done. So let me quickly show you how to seam it. And as I'm getting ready, think about any questions you might have. All right. So I'm just using a large-eyed blunt needle that I can easily work with yarn. I turned it inside out. And so make sure you're working with right sides together. And you can see here, if I were crocheting more, if I wanted to crochet on this more, here's where I would go in. So you can see each one of these is a crochet stitch that you could crochet into. But instead of crocheting into these stitches, I'm going to sew into them. So this makes it very easy to sew and get a nice seam, because all of the stitches are going to be spaced out the same distance, and they're all going to be going the same depth onto your work. It'll be very easy. So when I'm doing it, I like to hold it like this. I hold my finger in between the two pieces. It's just what I like. You can do it however you want. And this is called a running stitch or a basting stitch. So I'm going to go through to this side, and I'm going to enter the stitch from this side and go back through. So it's kind of like a zigzag. And you want to kind of pull them, don't pull them too tight, but kind of snug them up as you're going. And if you just do this right across, going through each stitch, then your seam will be very, very neat. And you want to keep this up until you get almost it all done. Save yourself enough room so that you can turn it right side out and then put your stuffing inside. You can stuff it so it's very, very firm. That tends to stretch it and you might see the stuffing, or you can stuff it and leave it very loose, and that'll feel softer and kind of more plush. So, however much stuffing you feel is right for your project. And then, of course, that would have been seamed. Leave about that much so that you can turn it right side out and stuff it, and then we'll sew that finished. You can sew that shut and have it finished, and then just weave in all. I think you should weave in your ends before you seam it. What would you do, Claire? I would before.
Yeah, weave in as many ends as you can before you seam it, because
before.
once
Yeah,
it's
but
all closed up, it's
yeah,
hard to get in there.
because you want to weave them in on the inside, not on the outside. If you forgot though, you could kind of weave them in here. It wouldn't be the end of the world. I'm sure worse things have happened. All right. That's pretty much the end of it. So were there any questions at all? I know it's a lot, maybe you have questions.
Sorry,
No
Darren, we're
questions?
getting caught up in the chat here.
Okay, sometimes I can see them.
Oh, good question from Joanne. How would you, like, say, if you forgot where you were, go about counting your rounds or how many stitches you have in a round?
So how many stitches is very easy. You just want to look at these. These are your stitches, so you can count them. So put a stitch marker on one, and then you can count them. And then that's how many stitches you have. So it's very easy to count them. The rounds can be a bit tricky sometimes, and so that's why I was saying you can put a stitch marker on each one. So, but you want to kind of look for these posts. So that's your kind of your crochet post. Let me isolate that so we can see it. So you can count your posts, or sometimes you can count these holes. If you're working in a spiral and it all looks the same, it's easier. If you're doing back and forth rounds where you're turning it, sometimes it's harder to see. But yeah, you just kind of count the posts. Does that help? Does that answer it? But as you're practicing, you can put a stitch marker at the beginning of every round and leave them all. And then that way it'll help you figure out how to count them. You can see the stitch marker and then look for either the post or the hole or how you're going to count them. That's a good way to help learn that. All right, so if there aren't any other questions, Claire, do you have anything else you want to tell us?
I think that is good for this class. I'm going to go ahead and pop the octopus jellyfish pattern in here one more time in case anyone needs it.
And if you need any additional help, once you start making that's usually when the questions happen, you can not email me, you can send me a direct message on Instagram. My Instagram name is Mr. Woolly Bear. Maybe Claire will put that in the chat. It's Mr. spelled out M-I-S-T-E-R. And it's just my picture. You'll recognize me. On Facebook, it's just my name spelled out just the way it is. Send me a direct message on either Instagram or Facebook. I can usually answer pretty quick. But if you have any questions going forward, don't hesitate to let me know. Ask. And if you make something, I'd love to see what you make so you can tag me in it or send me a picture. So anything like that, I would appreciate. So, all right. Don't forget to practice. Have a good night. Thanks for coming to class.